The Houston offense is bad. The TCU defense is struggling. Who's going to win this battle of weaknesses? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, also on your favorite podcast platform. We are brought to you by Gametime. If you need tickets to a big game like this Friday night between Houston and TCU, you can find it on the Gametime app. We'll tell you more details about that later on in the show. But right now, let's jump into this matchup with the Houston Cougars. Houston they have a first-year coach, Willie Fritz, who did a great job at Tulane. And Willie Fritz is honestly a great testament to – we'll see what he does at Houston. This is a tough job. I said the other day, Kevin Sumlin, Tom Herman had some success there, Major Applewhite somewhat. But since then, it's been difficult. And they worked really hard to get to a Power 5 conference and now a Power 4 conference. But the idea that, like, there's always this narrative around that university specifically. Oh, well, Houston, you just recruit guys in your backyard. I mean, come on. Like, everybody is recruiting the Houston Metroplex. It's a very talent-rich area. Yes, you have that pitch of, hey, you can stay home. But I think now, especially with NIL and how it works, that doesn't get you as far. And then also just the fact that recruiting is more national than ever. I mean, teams are coming in the state of Texas every single year, taking talent from this talent-rich state, and a lot of it resides in the Houston area. But there's some advantages to being at U of H. Willie Fritz has done a great job working his way up through the ranks. I'm not comparing him to these people, but a similar story to guys like Lance Leipold, Kalen DeBoer, who's now at Alabama, where it's just like they've won everywhere they've been. And JUCO, FCS, up to the Group 5, Power 5 level. They've done a good job. So I think that was a good hire by them. Now, so far, it's been pretty rough. They are 1-4 on the season, and they have not scored in the last 2 games. That's right. They have not scored a point in the last 2 games. And I wanted to spend some time today focusing on the matchup between the Houston offense and the TCU defense, because Houston's offense, at the moment, I think it would be an understatement to say that they are bad. They are currently the last – they're ranked at the bottom of FBS in scoring. They're averaging 10 points a game, which is 133 out of 133 teams at the FBS level. They are scoring less than anybody per game. They put up 34 points against Rice, I believe. And make sure I get this right. 33 points against Rice. They had a 33-7 victory over Rice. If you take out those 33 points and their other 4 games, they have scored 19 points. 7 of those points were against UNLV, which is a Group of 5 school. If you take that game out, 3 games against Power 4 competition, they have scored 12 points. All 12 of those points were against Oklahoma. And Iowa State has a good defense. It's tough to go on the road in Ames, Iowa, and be successful and win. But Cincinnati, I think, pretty solid team. I feel like that's going to be a tough game for TCU at the end of the season on the road. They're doing some nice things. But that being said, Cincy's not exactly a team that's really well known for their defensive prowess, even though they do have a really good nose tackle in the middle there. But Houston's offense has struggled mightily so far this season. TCU's defense has also struggled. And it's weird when you look at Houston's numbers, because there are some things that jump out at you like, yes, these are calling cards of an offense that is struggling. Donovan Smith has thrown 5 interceptions. Zion Chris has thrown 1, so 6 total. Smith has a 65% completion percentage, and he's only averaging about 6 yards per completion, 12 sacks. So they're turning the ball over. They're getting negative plays with sacks. They're not able to stretch the field in the passing game. But that being said, I mean, there's some skill talent here. Donovan Smith is an experienced quarterback. He's had an inconsistent career, but he was at one time the starter at Tech. It was due to injuries, but still, he was the guy. He transferred into Houston. Dana Holgorsen had some nice moments with him last year. Now, Dana is an offensive guy by trade. That's what he does. But Kevin Barbay, the Houston offensive coordinator, I mean, pretty good resume. Comes over from Mississippi State, where he was the OC there. Spent some time at Appalachian State, Central Michigan, Stephen F. Austin. And Stacey Sneed has had a productive season running the football. 217 yards on 36 carries, about 6 yards a carry. Stephon Johnson is a receiver they've had around the program for a little while. Same with Manjack, Joseph Manjack IV, who's been around for a bit. But those are your two leading receivers. They have 15. Johnson has 15 receptions. Manjack has 10. So your two leading wideouts combined have 25 catches on the season. Jack Besh has 39 catches himself so far this season. So that passing game has been a real issue. Now, all that being said, as you guys know very well, I'm sure, TCU is not really in a position to overlook anybody. They haven't set the world on fire either, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Now, they did play better last week against Kansas. I thought Kansas kind of helped them out with some of their play calling decisions, also QB and Jalen Daniels that struggled. But you're in some ways, you're in a similar situation this week. You got a quarterback in Donovan Smith that has struggled. How is Houston going to combat that? Well, I imagine with TCU struggles stopping the run, they're going to try to keep the ball on the ground as much as possible. Smith is a big physical runner himself. Sneed has done some nice things in the run game. Chris, their backup quarterback, who I think transferred in from Louisiana, he's mobile himself, so they can throw some different looks at him. But this is a week where you would hope TCU's defense can continue to build on some of the momentum that they put together after those first couple drives of the Kansas game. You saw some more physicality. Abe Kamara coming up and body slamming Jalen Daniels on that tackle on the option play. You saw a team that was rushing the passer better. Didn't get home a lot, but they were being disruptive, forced that intentional grounding call towards the end of the game, did some nice things in that regard. And if you can slow down this run game and force them into some obvious passing situations, then you can allow those edge rushers, those stud linebackers, to pin their ears back a little bit more and make some of those plays that we saw against Stanford. The biggest thing that stood out to me, aside from, yes, you've had issues slowing down the run game. You've had issues with run fits, with getting blown off the ball, but there was just a high level of energy, effort, and intensity in that Stanford game. And honestly, since that moment, TCU hasn't been able to replicate that. And I don't know all the reasons as to what's going on there. I think part of it is when you're struggling, it's hard to be sure of yourself. It's hard to play with a lot of confidence and with a lot of energy. But I think that's priority number one. You have to kind of get your swagger back to a certain extent and play with bad intentions. I've used this example before, but going back to talking to Ron Cooper, a Long Island coach, before that game, he was like, listen, I turned on the film, and the thing that jumped out at me, I expected them to be good on offense. I didn't expect to see that type of effort and just physicality on the defense side of the ball. And, yeah, they played Stanford, right? Like, that's part of it. But that's something that you can bring to the table every week, even if you're struggling to execute. Putting Marcus Deal in there in the interior defensive line made a difference. I would also say I expect to see Channing Cannon to get some more snaps at corner this week, right? We'll see what they do at linebacker. I'll talk a little bit more about that in segment 2. Max Carroll did some nice things. They're a little banged up in that area right now. So could he see some more playing time because of that? All that remains to be seen. But I think this is the biggest factor in this ball game, because if Houston's going to win, the path for them to do it, given how much they've struggled this year on offense, is to try to sustain long drives, keep the ball on the ground as much as possible, keep the TCU offense off the field, and turn this into a rock fight. And they've had some success doing that this year. It was a 3-0 ball game when they played Iowa State last week at the end of the third quarter. Not at halftime, at the end of the third quarter. Now, that Houston defense eventually wore down, and you saw, okay, there's some opportunities there. Iowa State made some big plays. They hung in there with Oklahoma for a while. I mean, that was a one-possession game for a lot of the second half. And so they've got that blueprint working of, okay, we can be competitive. And there have been games where they got blown out too, Cincinnati and UNLV. But they can be competitive if they can kind of control the pace of the game, control the direction it's moving, and really focus on, let's try to sustain drives. So TCU has to find a way to get them off the field and put them in third down situations that are not favorable. Because another stat that you need to know, they are 129th in the nation. I'm talking about the Houston Cougars in third down conversion percentage. They have converted 26% of their third down so far this year. They've had 65 third down attempts. They've only converted 17 of them. This team has not been able to find any sort of consistent passing game and passing attack. And because of that, they are very limited in third down situations if it's not third and short or third and manageable, where they can keep the ball on the ground. So TCU needs to put them in those situations, get after Donovan Smith and the pass rush, and force punts, allow your offense to get going. And as I said yesterday, I think, a huge part of this is going to be, can you take an early lead? Can you get up by 2 scores early in this ball game and sort of take the life out of this team that's struggling? That could be a big advantage for TCU if they can get it done. When we come back, Sonny Dykes spoke to the media today, had some updates about injuries, also just kind of general direction of the team, some things that they might change up this week. That's all coming up next here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. If you need tickets to that game Friday night, TCU, Houston, I know it's tough for a lot of you because high school football is happening, right? You got family playing those games, or you just want to go see your favorite high school football team, whatever the case is. But if you're available, download the Gametime app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for your first purchase. There are a couple of things I love about the Gametime app. One is there's no hidden fees. Listen, there's some fees. You're going to have to pay them, but they'll tell you what they're going to be up front. So I always appreciate that about Gametime. Another thing I love about the Gametime app, it's just they're really transparent about what your view is going to be from your seat. I'm looking right now. There's tickets for as low as $18, $35 in section 130, $33 in section 118, $26 up in 409. And if you're like Steven, I'm not looking to get cheap tickets like that. Well, there's anything you would want. If you want to spend some more money, you can do that. But the Gametime app, they make it easy for you. Houston and TCU this Friday night should be a fun one. Check it out on the Gametime app today. Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. So Sonny Dykes, his weekly Tuesday press conference, updating the media on the team, where they're at. He says Nnamdi Ogbazor practiced today. So I missed this during the game. Nnamdi went down with an injury, and he had to come out of the ball game. Max Carroll came in his place, and I thought did a nice job. Also, Terrence Cooks, which I said this to Matt Jennings. I mean, I honestly forgot that he was on the roster, but it was good to see him. Terrence transferred in before the 2022 season and came over from Texas and has just dealt with injuries and hasn't been able to make the field. But he played with great energy and effort when he was out there. So it sounds like Nnamdi's probably going to play some, but maybe there will be a little more rotation there. And honestly, I'm fine with that. They've talked about rotating the offensive line because they want to keep those guys fresh. I mean, to a certain extent, I do think that tells you they've got just some issues there, that they don't feel like they can get a consistent 70 snaps out of 5 guys. But I understand the thought process. If you keep these guys fresh throughout the game, maybe in the fourth quarter, in the second half, you can do some things running the football. Well, that linebacker spot, another physical position, if you have that ability to sub some of these guys in and out at times, that could be really beneficial. So we'll see how they handle it with Nnamdi. But he did practice today and working towards playing this week. It was nice to see, though. I feel like one of the big encouraging things about the Kansas game, and we'll talk more about some of these young guys later, a lot of the young players that they sort of were in plug-and-play mode, whether it was because there were injuries or it was just like, man, we got to see if somebody else can step up and do something here. They all played well. I mean, for the most part, everybody that they got more snaps made an impact, which is a huge thing because honestly, like, we're in year 3 now of the Sonny era, and there haven't been a lot of guys that he recruited from high school that have stepped in and have played a lot of snaps and that have made a big impact on the field yet. And so seeing like Jeremy Payne as a true freshman be really good, seeing Max Carroll come in and make some things happen, that was super encouraging to me, at least. Sonny also said he's really impressed with how hard Houston plays, regardless of the situation of the game. He says they're elite on special teams and they play very good defense, big physical front, and speed in the secondary. Houston has 7 sacks this year on defense. They've gotten after the quarterback a little bit. They've done a good job slowing down the run game. I'll be interested to see how the TCU passing attack fares against them because Frogs been able to throw against everybody. So far, they've been able to just throw against everybody and kind of do what they wanted there. So with Houston having a solid defense, does that change this week, or is it kind of business as usual? Josh Hoover spreading the ball around, finding Jack Besh, finding Savion Williams, Eric McAllister. All those guys have been productive so far this year. So intrigued to see how they handle playing a good defense this week. But I really like what Kendall Browse has done, scheming up some things in the short pass game, both to supplement the run game, but also to give you that ability and that confidence to take more shots down the field and just give yourself more space and more room to work with. And their receivers have just been outstanding this year. So that's been kind of the biggest bright spot to me outside of, winning some of these games, is just that you've got good skill position players once again. Sonny said the thing that stands out about the Houston QBs is they're both capable of running. He assumes Houston will work hard to establish the run game. I mean, I think that's really the only way they can go about this. TCU struggled to stop the run. You just got to be physical and get downhill. And it's going to be up to the Frogs to stop that and force them into throwing situations. And then hopefully getting stops, getting off the field will allow this offense to really get into full form and put up some points. The Frogs want this to be more of a wide open ball game. Houston wants to slow it down, turn it into a slugfest. And so whoever can control that pace, control that aspect of it, that's going to go a long way in deciding who has the advantage and who's going to win this football game this week. Sonny Dykes and Jeremy Payne, I think you're going to see more of him this week. I love that, man. He was great. He earned more reps. And, I don't know if he'll be the starter, but honestly, just getting him on the field more is a big deal. He showed burst. He showed explosiveness in the run game. They've thrown the ball to him a few times, and he's handled that fine. And then I think maybe the thing that's impressed me the most, just because with young players, it's not typically what you see or what you expect, but getting out in space and getting some blocks. He had a pancake block on that Haas run on 4th and short. He was able to get out there on J.P. Richardson's screen pass for a first down late in the first half and get a good block on the outside to allow him to get some extra yardage. So the fact that he's already doing that, already doing the little things at that position that not everybody picks up on or sees, I think it shows maturity. And, yeah, I'm ready for him to get more opportunities and just get the ball in his hands more because he looked really good running the football against Kansas. And then finally, Andy Avalos moving from upstairs in the booth to the sideline. See how it goes. So, hey, it really to me, like, that's always a thing. If a team if one unit's struggling, that's like, first thing somebody's going to do. Okay, I'll change my spot. If I'm on the sidelines, I'll move to the box. If I'm on the box, I'll move to the sidelines. I don't know how much it matters, but if it makes the team more comfortable, if it allows him to be more involved in just coaching the guys up, talking through some things, those in-game adjustments, then great. And he'll still have those eyes in the sky from other people on the staff who can say, hey, this is matching personnel-wise, this is what we need to do, or scheme-wise, this is what we need to do, because they'll have that better angle of how these plays are unfolding and what's going on. But, if it works out, then good. Again, I don't really know how much of a difference it will make, but that's just kind of a typical thing that will be an adjustment for coordinators when one of their units is having issues. When we come back, we will wrap things up with some of your thoughts. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Shout out to our friends at FanDuel. They've been holding us down for a long time. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. Download it today. One $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets. That's right. One $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets on the FanDuel app or at FanDuel.com. NFL games, college football games, Major League Baseball playoffs, whatever it is that you're interested in, you can participate at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. FanDuel, it's where the game starts. Proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. I started yesterday's show discussing just what a great season Jack Bech has had. And, I don't usually spend like a whole segment necessarily talking about one player, but somebody mentioned the possibility of him winning the Blitnikoff Award. I didn't scoff at it. I was just sort of like, yeah, maybe. And then I looked at the numbers and was like, wow, he's, second in the country in yards. He's up there with touchdowns. He's the leading receiver in the Big 12 right now. He's doing everything at a high level. So it's been fun to watch him play. Jose said in the YouTube comments he's a beast. Yeah, he is. He's been fantastic this year, man. I mean, you really can't overstate what he's been able to do. And I guess it wasn't completely unexpected because Sonny Dykes had a lot of high praise for him during fall camp. And I know, he did some really good things at LSU. But I was thinking, Savion or McAllister, and those guys have been good too. But Jack has just been another level, and it's been a lot of fun to watch him play. He tore up that Kansas secondary. Even in the losses this year, he had great games against UCF and SMU. So he's been productive every week. Jacob Langford says, hope Bech keeps it up. He's been a great bright spot this year. He has for sure. And, I think he will. I don't see a reason other than just health as to why he wouldn't. And it's been the most impressive thing about this TCU team this year is really regardless of the opponent and all the extenuating circumstances, they've been able to throw the football. So that's been fun to watch. Brian Caper says receiver group is special. Pick your poison. Yeah, that's what's been cool too. It seems like they really fit together well. And we'll see if as the year goes on they find more of that vertical passing game. But they kind of made up for it with all the yak yards they get, just yards after catch, by finding these guys in the middle of the field and allowing them to go to work. But, yeah, Eric McAllister's been good. Savion's had his moments. Jack has been great. J.P. Richardson has been very consistent. Matthew Welker says the thing with Jack is those yak yards and his ability to extend the yardage after contact. Yes, he's tough. He's physical. And if you take a bad angle or you come in there not ready to wrap up and tackle, then he will make you pay for it. And then Robbie says, I wish Bech was still at LSU. He's an LSU fan. You got a good one. Yes, sir. Thanks for listening to the show. Thanks for tuning in, and we are enjoying watching him play for sure. We'll be back tomorrow with Parker Ainsworth of Locked On Cougs. We'll do a crossover episode. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever it is you get your podcasts.